I'd like to start by just replying to some of the things Tucker said. And generally, our challenge here tonight is that Tucker and Jordan and I agree on almost everything. So we're trying to get a bit of controversy going. But I would say this, Tucker, as far as I can see, the governing party in your country now has as its sole claim to resumption of its mandate the equation Trump equals Hitler, which is, of course, so fatuous and outrageous that no person with an IQ in at least double figures could believe it. And it will get the reception it deserves on Election Day, I think, despite massive efforts at stuffing the ballot boxes and bringing non-existent people onto the voting list. But because of that, I think we should be doubly careful about suggesting that Chrystia Freeland, whom I also know, I've known her for some years, is worse than the Nazis. I mean, she isn't. She's actually quite a nice lady, but she's politically misguided, has always been misguided. The FT, which you support, other than for hiring her, is itself not an acceptable publication anymore. It's a ludicrous, globalist, socialistic, interventionist, regimentationist paper. Not really the paper it was under Nigel Lawson and others of a legitimate newspaper for commerce, free commerce everywhere in the world. And so what we have is bad enough without suggesting it's Nazism or worse. It isn't. It's not that bad, but it's bad.
If I could just, this is a problem that I have had my whole life. I don't fully explain what I think, and you raise a really good point. I made a serious charge against her, and let me just be a lot more precise about why I believe what I said. I saw the video the other day, and I've never taken her seriously, as I said. But I didn't think that she was as malicious and cold as I now believe she is until I saw the video of David Menzies from Rebel News being arrested after trying to ask her a question. And I thought to myself, as someone who is often approached by people as I walk into buildings with questions, how would I feel if someone approached me and asked a question, even a question I don't like, and my security team threw him against a wall and put him in handcuffs? I would say, you stop that immediately. I could not, as a matter of conscience, allow a man to be arrested in my presence for asking a question. And I think that anyone who thinks that's okay is a truly dangerous person who should not have power. That's how I feel.
I agree with you, except I don't think she ordered it. I think we.
But she watched it.
No, let me say something. I think, in a way, what happened is even more worrisome than that. Some palooka from the RCMP took it upon himself as a demonstration of initiative, precisely the kind of initiative you attributed to the people in goose-stepping in tight uniforms. And I mean, many people, especially in the United States, still think of the RCMP as people in red tunics with a musical ride, and Rosemarie with Nelson Eddy and so on, singing in the Rockies here. But we saw in the MacDonald Commission inquiry after the imposition of the War Measures Act by the elder Trudeau in 1970, what an absolutely incompetent bunch of palookas the RCMP are. So some of the blame belongs on them, their initiative. I
agree, but it's her security detail, and as someone, I know you spent a lot of your life with security around you, whatever, you just can't allow that. You just cannot allow people to behave that way because it's such a violation of human rights, and that's happening in this country, and no one's saying anything about it, I think.
I want to turn to Jordan. We've had discussions in Calgary earlier today and last night, and I emerged as the optimist. And I'm not an absolute optimist, but in fact, I think the public is turning in this country and in the United States. I'm afraid, as a member of the British Parliament, I can't hold out any hope for England for the next 5 years, but it'll come to its senses eventually. But I think it's turning, and we see it tonight. We see it, believe it or not, it is even the case in Toronto, where you Albertans have more friends and admirers than you think, including Jordan and me. A city, I may say, that I understand Albertans don't like Toronto, and I don't blame them, but when Tucker compares Toronto to Gary, Indiana, which is a bombed-out rubble heap of abandoned steel factories and rioters and drug dealers, he stirs up something I was not aware that I possessed, and that was a bit of municipal chauvinism. But I would like to ask Jordan, on this business of, I mean, we agree. I think everyone in this great stadium agrees with Tucker's denunciation of our health system. It's a shambles and a disgrace, and it is so bad that, as he said, the health system that is supposed to promote life is now selling the virtues of suicide, and not only to sick people, to poor people as well, as if you have no chance of recovering and becoming prosperous. But Jordan, where do you stand on this optimism-pessimism scale that Tucker and I have built up a little here?
I think we have every reason to assume that, and I guess this is why I'm going around the world talking to people, I guess, is that I think that if we put our hearts and our souls into it, that we could make this world into a place that's so good we could hardly imagine it. And I think with the technology that's in front of us, which is transforming at a rate that's beyond comprehensible, literally, that we could do much better in the next 50 years than we did in the last 200, and that's really saying something. But I also think that if we let the worst parts of ourselves gain the upper hand, given our enhanced technological power, we could produce a hell that would make Stalinist Russia and Nazi Germany look like practice. And so there's a great hope in that, but a great warning. And one of the things you all want to consider too is that because you're so much more powerful than people were in the past with the technology that you have at your disposal, with the influence that you can have in the world, that all your particular and individual moral flaws are going to find their amplification in the world in a way that wasn't really evidently true in the past. And so I think that if we got our act together, things could be unbelievably positive. But if we remain narcissistic, infantile, and foolish, like certain of our leaders, then things could go extraordinarily badly. And I think we'll see how that plays out in the course of the lifetimes of most of the people in this room.
I have the honor of sharing a podcast with the eminent historian Victor Hansen and the former U.S. drug czar and education secretary Bill Bennett. And Victor presents, I think, very accurately the correlation of forces in our English-speaking countries' societies that Tucker referred to. The enemy of practically all of us here, unless they're spies from the CBC or elsewhere, they possess the academy, they possess the media, they possess Wall Street and the equivalent to an extent in Canada. Silicon Valley, which I agree with you, is an abominable place. You should direct your strictures against them instead of Toronto. And they have big entertainment and big sport. I mean, people are tremendously talented at entertaining and athletics, but are utter morons politically, malignant morons, many of them. They have all of that, but we have the people. And we are going to show that. And despite their attempt to steal elections in your country, we don't much stoop to that here, although we may learn. We imitate everything else you do. Despite that, we're going to win. And I'm very confident about that. And what Jordan said